I own homes around the world, and I've told you for years, I buy, not lease. I pay cash. I don't deal with banks. A lot of folks don't understand why I would quote unquote leave money on the table. Today I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to react to someone who disagrees with me and says I should be leasing. Owning property around the world gives you geographical diversification, it gives you currency diversification. No matter what happens in the world, you've got different levers you can pull. You're not reliant on one country. It also gives me the chance to travel around the world for business, meet with team members, have a hub, see what's going on in various parts of the world. And from a lifestyle perspective, I think there are so many great places in the world. I don't want to just choose one. I like traveling around and being part of different cultures. And yet I've told you, from my perspective, because I live a tax-optimized life, I don't pay zero, but I pay a rate that I've agreed upon in a place that is tax-friendly. I have more money to invest in myself and in my lifestyle, and I don't have to do the things that someone in US or Canada or Australia is doing, where they're paying 40 or 50% tax, and they're looking for tax deductions, and they're looking to write off the home office. I'm against all that stuff. I think you ought to live the most organic life, have a tax-friendly or tax-free life, take some of the money you save, invest that back into your business, invest that back into your lifestyle. Let me play you something from a guy you may have seen around. It's Tai Lopez talking about why he's leasing a $100 million mansion in Beverly Hills, and I'm going to tell you why I respectfully disagree.
So let me give you the reasons why I just leased this $100 million house in Beverly Hills. Why would I lease this for a year?
So first things first, for me, the perspective of wanting to live in different places, I'm not a mansion guy in general. You know, I like to have a nice home. I have 2 larger properties and 5 what you'd call a pied-à-terre. And that goes on the fact that I might go here for a week, I might go there for 2 weeks. Being there for 2 weeks in a mansion would feel kind of weird to me. I like to have the property distributed in different places. Again, not only for the lifestyle, but for the different levers that during the pandemic, for example, I had numerous different places to go to, not one mansion in Beverly Hills where I was at their mercy.
Is that crazy? Well, I'm gonna tell you what Felix Dennis, he had the 3 F's rule. If it flies, floats, or lease it, don't buy it.
All right, so this is this thing that's constantly repeated. Sure, yes, lease your private jets, don't buy them. Kind of this constant refrain. It's folk wisdom at this point. Don't entirely agree with that, but let's continue.
But that's not the real reason. I'm gonna give you the reasons why I would do something crazy, because we live in a world, it's like if you lease a Lamborghini, people think, oh, this person's dumb, or they're trying to pretend, or if they lease a house, you know, this isn't an Airbnb, this is...
One of the things that I've seen being the Nomad Capitalist is, yes, I meet a lot of you around the world, but for those of you living this lifestyle with me, you are gonna be a bit detached from the people who are gonna say stuff like that. And I think that because you live in a place where you're so focused on what people are talking about, rather than detaching a little bit, floating above society in some way, going to a place where you don't have to worry what people are talking about, maybe you don't even understand what they're saying, that's the difference of living the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle.
Now, for me, I buy farmland. I own farms. This is number 1. There are things you should buy and things you should lease. I like to buy farms. Farmland's been the best risk-adjusted return in America in the last 30 years.
So my perspective of this, and this is where I diverge from folks, and I hate to say it, even from Warren Buffett. Who am I to question Warren Buffett? But I think that some things have changed. For me, number 1, you want some geographical diversification. Now, can you buy farms all around the world? Sure, you can do that. That's harder to do due to restrictions on owning farmland in certain countries and just the logistical challenges. But I think that, you know, this idea that you like to buy farms shouldn't be mutually exclusive with, I'd also like to own my home. Now, I understand that certain folks who are in business, they say for asset protection reasons, I don't want to own my own home. Well, if you owned your own home in some other country, you'd have a certain natural level of asset protection. But if you live in Beverly Hills, if you live in California, you're paying taxes out the wazoo. You're probably paying half your income or more if you're the kind of person who's leasing or buying this level of house. So imagine you moved out and came into my lifestyle. Yes, even Americans can dramatically reduce their taxes, maybe not eliminate them. In some cases, not all, eliminate them. What if you put a lot more money back in your pocket? You could still buy all the farms you're buying now. Are you gonna take that extra money and put that into farms as well? I think when you live a tax-friendly lifestyle, when you have different levers, that you're not stuck in one place, when you're not at the mercy of one government, you get a bit more freedom to say, I'm going to be more conservative. I don't have to put every dollar going for broke. I don't have to put every dollar in a growth stock. And I don't. I have plenty of dollars in some pretty boring stuff that just churns out cash flow repeatedly. And I'm not reliant on what one country's going to do. So I think the idea of it's an if farmland or if that, I think that the mindset changes of moving overseas, saving money, and you can be more conservative with some of that money you save.
A home like this for $100 million, I think I'd rather put my money in something useful like farms.
By the way, the fact that it's and I don't know if this is a $100 million home or not. I mean, there's certainly not a lot of $100 million homes out there. Let's say it's a $10 million home. I was talking to a pretty well-known guy in the entertainment business, and he got turned on to a place in Europe because his friend said, hey, I was just in this particular part of Europe, and they're selling homes that would cost $20 million in California. You can get one for 2 million euros. So basically, 1/9 or 1/10 the price. So step one, Beverly Hills. Do you need to be in Beverly Hills in this era of running your business from anywhere? I understand there's cachet. For me, step one is detaching from that cachet. Maybe I want to be in the best neighborhood in Bogota or Kuala Lumpur or somewhere that I like. But I almost kind of see it as a trap of, I live in Beverly Hills. Is it because I like Beverly Hills, or is it because I need to live in Beverly Hills for the cachet or for some part of my business? Not particular to Tai, but just in general. How many folks in Beverly Hills actually love Beverly Hills versus that's just, well, I have to do it?
What I also like about this house, and reason number 2, is a lease for tax purposes and deductions. If you've got a big wing of business like I do, you get better tax deductions on a lease versus a purchase.
So we're not giving tax advice here, and I'm not going to get into that. I think there's a lot of talk from various people on the internet about all the different tricks of how you can reduce your taxes domestically. And hey, to make your home an office. I mean, there's some pretty strict rules, especially in the US, about how that works. You can't just write off the whole house. You can't just take the whole thing off. I saw some guy advising people like buy a Rolex and run it through your business. There are countries, some of the tax-friendly countries that we might talk about for setting up your company in, where they might be more amenable, not to buying a Rolex, but like buying your suits if the suits are worn for work. The US and a lot of the legacy brand Western countries, they're not really that flexible. Now, here's the bigger issue. Why are we running our entire lives seeking out tax deductions? For the thought of, well, if I have to move overseas, that's going to take some part of my brain to figure out. That's what Nomad Capitalist is here for. We help 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes, get second passports, build a life overseas, or just create a plan B. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn how we do that. I think it's the best service out there because I built it for what I needed. But I'll tell you, you can outsource that part of the job. What I think a lot of people spend time doing is, how am I getting tax deductions? You get a lease for the tax deduction. What if you just banished from your mind ever getting the tax deduction? Again, I do pay some income tax every year. It's a pretty small percentage of what I earn. I don't bother if I make a charitable donation keeping the receipt because the percentage I'm paying is so small, it's like, it's not worth it. I essentially have functioned the way I did for years where I don't owe tax to anybody. And so everything you do is just organic. If you want to give to charity, it's because you want to give to that charity. If you want to buy a house, if you want to lease an office, it's because that's valuable. And people have this mindset of, hey, if I can save 40 cents on the dollar in a tax deduction, you're still losing 60 cents. And what you're losing is the mental energy of so many decisions you're making are being done for tax deductions. What if you just got that out of your mind and redevoted that energy to something more productive for growing your business? I bet those recovered hours would be worth quite a lot. And by the way, going offshore is a plan A. Physically moving somewhere else, getting the $100 million mansion for $10 million, for example, leasing it probably for 10 cents on the dollar. That's one of the most certain ways to lower your taxes. A lot of these things you see domestically, some of them can be a little shaky. And I'm not going to get into specifics, but we've seen some in our business. People come to us, I'm thinking of doing this or that. We talk to our network of tax experts and tax lawyers. They say, that's pretty shaky. That's pretty aggressive. Moving overseas and saying, I don't live here anymore, don't tax me, or exclude most of my income, in my opinion, one of the most conservative ways to save taxes, and yet it has one of the most aggressive benefits. You ain't saving 1 or 2%, you're saving 80, 90, 100%.
Yeah, it's a sitting room, but I'm gonna put in grand piano. I like to play the piano. Elevator.
They do have pianos in other countries, just in case you were wondering.
I'm putting the logo on here. So the next reason.
By the way, to the point of like he's going to put the logo on the elevator, you're going to decorate. That's another reason I don't lease. I mean, I think, again, recovering mental energy. I'm a big believer in focus all your energy on the things that are important to you. I don't want to have to go and fight with a landlord. Just, how can I decorate the place? Can I hang up artwork? Can I paint a wall? I don't want to fight with anybody. I don't want to use my energy dealing with that. Yeah, you have an assistant, great. It never works that perfectly. I also want to know, because I have levers in my life, because I have homes, and during the pandemic, for example, there's one place I didn't go for a year and a half. I wasn't worried about paying a lease for a year and a half. I loved that home. I still love going there, but I didn't really go there for a year and a half during the pandemic. It wasn't the best place to be. And so I wasn't paying rent and feeling like, oh, that's a waste. I wasn't worried about, am I going to have to go and repaint the wall back to the way it was when I go back? I wasn't worried about any of that. I think that people in a lease probably spend a lot of mental energy thinking about, how to, manage the lease and manage the landlord relationship more than you might think. When you could just own the home and whatever you do, it's permanent. If I paint a wall somewhere and don't go back for 3 years, when I go back in 3 years, it's waiting for me. And I think being in a comfortable environment is important. It doesn't have to be a mansion.
Number 3 is flexibility. So you got to know what motivates you. There's 4 M's of motivation. I built a system that's a personality quiz. M number 1, humans are motivated by material things. Number 2, humans are motivated by mating. Number 3, movement/freedom. Number 4 is mastery/status. For me, I found out years ago, my number 1 motivator, I'm motivated by all 4, but the strongest is movement freedom.
And I agree with that. And for me, not having the $100 million home, but saying, you know what, I'm going to go to Kuala Lumpur. And for $600,000, you can get not a mansion, but a nice penthouse that you've redone to your taste, and it's comfortable, and it's cozy, and you got and you're still shouting to people across the house, and they can't hear you. Like, how much space do you need? That's my personal opinion. And because you're spending so much less, I don't know what a lease on a $100 million home costs, might not be that far off, $600,000 a month. And so I say, have the tax savings. Again, even if you're the $10 million level to lease, take the tax savings on whatever high income you have. You could take just those tax savings for probably a year and build a collection of pied-à-terres around the world. And then you have your flexibility. Then you're going to get residence permits from some of those countries, maybe a citizenship or 2 from other countries. Now you've got more flexibility that just living in Beverly Hills doesn't give you. And he talks about mating. If mating's a priority, you could be moving around to different places of your pied-à-terres, and you're not tied to one place. If the mates in Beverly Hills aren't working out for you, you got a place over here. And so the formula is save the money in your taxes, reinvest that money back into properties, you build the flexibility, and you build up your options.
So by leasing a home, you can just be like, I'll be in here for a year. Could be, I got a multi-year extension if I want to, but I have the ultimate flexibility.
Depending on where you want to live, by the way, I've seen people talking to landlords in certain places where the landlord's like, I'm not giving you a multi-year extension. I'm not giving you an option. You take it year by year. Now, obviously, a lot of Western places are very tenant friendly. So you can be in there, and as long as you keep paying, it's hard to get rid of you or really jack up the rent too much. But again, to me, I have the ultimate flexibility. If I have a pied-à-terre in Belgrade, Serbia, and I don't want to go there for 5 years, I might have to send someone to run a broom over the place, but I haven't really lost anything. And what I have in the meantime is I have some amount of money that's in Serbia, that's out of other countries, and it's a diversified investment. It is in a different currency than the currency I deal with, the US dollar. It's in euros. It's in a country where they have their own currency. It's in a country where they have their own rules. And it's in a country where, hey, again, maybe one day I actually want to go there because there's a certain reason that might precipitate my wanting to go there. Again, the pandemic was one of those. To me, that's a lot more flexibility than saying, I can leave this place in a year. I can leave any place that I own for some time because my financial commitment to buying properties overseas is better. By the way, talking about the point of mating, I'll take the people in Belgrade, Serbia over the people in Beverly Hills. Thank you.
I might not like being here. I've lived around the world. I've got homes in multiple places, and the world changes. So you may want to lease, even if it's a big $100 million home like this, okay?
Again, the world changes, which is why I don't want to rely on the landlords. By the way, I used to lease when I was younger, and I remember had one issue. I've heard other people had this issue. I told the landlord, hey, I'm moving. I moved to California, stupidly, for about 6 months for a big consulting gig when I was like 22. And I had a lease where I was living. And I said, hey, you're not going to let me out of the lease. Just, I'll pay you. Here's the money. And I'm leaving. I needed to use the place one day. I didn't expect to. I came back, put the key in the door. The guy changed the locks. It's still the lease that I paid for. I had to go after the guy. And he eventually had to refund me the money where he had taken the apartment back from me despite me paying. I never want to rely on other people, especially a landlord. I'm not one of these guys who bashes landlords. I think the West has gone way too far in how they're handling landlords and making it difficult. But do I want to be in a subservient relationship where who knows what little things could happen? Who knows what they demand of me? I'm sure there's plenty of great landlords that are pretty easy to deal with, and you'd hope at a $100 million or $10 million level that's the case. Bottom line, I'd rather be in control of the property, and that helps me sleep a lot better at night.
Next reason is charity. Never just live for yourself. I call it the 50-50 rule. You should spend 50% of your life living for yourself and your family and people who depend on you, but 50% live for the good of others. So this house is amazing. I already did a big event, a charity pool party. You know, this backyard will hold 800 people. And
I think when you follow my plan A, you move overseas, you keep more of your income, you probably cut your expenses. Certainly on expensive housing like this, it's going to be cheaper somewhere else for equal quality. And you can take all the money you save, you can find actual good charities. And by the way, a lot easier to find good charities and know what actually the needs are when you're on the ground in some of the places that I go out of interest, rather than sitting in Beverly Hills. And by the way, we just had at Nomad Capitalist Live, we had the whole team that came to work there over, I think 26 people came over to my house. So I'm sure you can put more than 26 people in the living room of a $100 million mansion. But quite frankly, 26 was enough.
Next reason to lease versus buy is maintenance responsibility. You know how expensive this house is to maintain?
Much more so in a place like the United States or Canada. Come and look at my maintenance costs. Come and look at the actual maintenance that goes into my property. I have a house manager who manages the properties, a couple of them in particular, not some of them have local property managers who go in and do a little cleaning every once in a while. But the financial requirements, the paperwork requirements, the bureaucracy, all that kind of stuff overseas pales in comparison, as do the costs to what you'd pay in a place like the US. I ran through this once a couple of years ago. I mean, my property taxes combined, you might live in a middle-class home in parts of the United States for what I'm paying everywhere, including on some more expensive properties. So this is largely a factor of the United States, and people imagine that's going to be the case everywhere.
A house like this got like 16 air conditioners. Things can break and you can drop 100 grand like nothing. This marble, this is a very...
Just redid the air conditioning in a similar size home for a couple grand. And again, not to say that all my stuff is made out of marble. I always wondered when I go to see these properties for sale in some places, oh, we have the Villeroy and Boch toilets. Don't really care what brand my toilet is. Some of this stuff I just always understood. Like for me, the better opportunity cost is why am I buying a place with Villeroy and Boch toilets or marble everywhere where I don't really care about some of that. I want it to look the way I want it to look. And yeah, I'm gonna be a bit lean and the money I'm saving is going somewhere else. I think some of this stuff, quite frankly, I like nice stuff, but never understood the brand of toilet.
Next reason is when you buy, you're making a bet on that location. And places like California like this, they've changed.
Simple answer is don't live in California. Come on, come overseas.
Property values up in San Francisco. People thought things can never go down. Homes that were $10 million are selling for $5 million. Things that are $1 million condos are selling for $400,000. So because of the uncertainty of the modern world, leasing versus buying, you're not having to make such a long-term bet. You drop a...
And yet I'd like to make a long-term bet on certain places. And because you can do so much more cheaply, and because sometimes that long-term bet comes with a residence permit, comes with a citizenship, you're getting something. I mean, you can go Istanbul, Bogota, Tbilisi, just, three of the places that we mentioned. You can get residence or citizenship just by buying there. And so if you made a bet in those places a couple of years ago, you did very, very well. Now, of course, I agree. The idea that property only goes up is dumb. Nothing only goes up. You should be prepared for the downside. I'm happy to weather any potential downside on a much, 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 much smaller investment of a smaller home in a place where I like to go and spend a week or two a year and helps me build my business in that part of the world or from its perspective. That to me is a lot better than having one lease and saying, hey, well, if it doesn't work, I'll leave. Because here's the reality. People say when things get bad enough, I'll leave. They generally don't. What helps you leave? Well, one thing is having 7 homes. You know what they all look like, you know the neighborhoods, you know that you can be comfortable there. If you had 7 homes and your government, local, national, whatever, did one thing you didn't like, you'd be like, to hell with them, I'm on the next flight out, because you know what you'd be getting into. But if you have the one big lease, you know, it's a bit different. And I think, you know, a lot of this is mindset. People can say, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, that's how people act. I see thousands of people doing it over the years. And look at how Los Angeles repaid everybody with this new ULA, the luxury tax when you sell your property. They just decided to gouge you. You made an investment. You bet on them. They screwed you. You didn't have a say. They just went back in time and said, now you got to pay. But I think people extrapolate that as if it happens everywhere. Happens in a number of Western countries, doesn't really happen in most places.
And I don't know if you've been watching the news. California, a little cray-cray.
Maybe a good idea not to live in places that are a little cray-cray. I mean, visit. How about lease a hotel room?
Another reason, it's a great opportunity to test a place. So if you negotiate a lease correctly, you can a lot of times put that you have first option to buy.
So this is, you know, one thing that I would be open-minded to. If you say, hey, listen, I'm going to work with Nomad Capitalist. My plan A is I'm moving to Panama City, Panama. And I want to make sure it's the right place for me because I'm not going to go around and try 6 places. But I think Panama City is the best one. We've determined it ticks the boxes. Let me lease for the first year? Sure, I'm all for it. And I've done that, you know, many, many years ago in my journey. Now, again, if you can afford to, you know, drop $500,000 or $750,000 on a beautiful condo in Panama City, they'll give you a top-tier residence permit. That's one of the ways you can get a residence permit in Panama. And as long as you have that property, you've got a tax-friendly country you can live in. So again, that's the international angle here. But sure, if you want to lease for that first year to make sure Panama City isn't totally, you know, a dreadful place to be, I'm all for that. What I did was went all around the world living in hotel rooms and Airbnbs and stuff like that. Many, many years ago. Found the places that I like. I still travel. Occasionally I might add something to the portfolio. So I'm all for testing. But I also think, again, when you buy properties, he says you're making a bet. And if you think, hey, a tax-friendly country in a good time zone could be a good bet, maybe you just take part of the money you're saving and put it in that if you feel confident enough.
But now I want to go back to one of the points. Let's say you buy a $1 million place, 10 million, 100 million. That's not a tax deduction.
Again, with the tax deductions, build the tax-friendly life you want, paying 0, 1, 2, 5% to where you don't care about the tax deduction. Or in some of those countries, they don't really let you have tax deductions because you're paying such a low rate. Build that life. Yeah, it's not in California. Yeah, you might have to let go of. You're not going to the pool party at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I promise you, they have pool parties other places too.
If you're doing an exchange out of another property, but that's a little more advanced.
I don't spend my time making decisions on investments about tax. I just follow the plan that I made years ago, and I don't think about it.
Now, but the point being, in general, when you put money into a lease, assuming you work with an accountant, knows what they're doing, good tax lawyer, and you're genuinely using it for business purposes, there's a tax deduction element.
And again, when there's a tax deduction, the amount you were paying in tax comes back to you, at best. So you're still losing money. My system, you still end up with more money.
Usually you're not going to tax deduct the whole place because you're using some of it for personal.
And so, I mean, if the answer is, listen, Andrew, I think moving to any other place in the world besides Beverly Hills is stupid. Listen, he says he travels and we've talked about that. But if someone's saying, I would only live in Beverly Hills, everything else in the world sucks, there's nowhere else to be, this is the epicenter of the universe, well then just make that the argument. It's an emotional argument, but people make emotional arguments and then they try and like sprinkle on top all this logic. If it's a tax deduction, you want flexibility. It's like, no. If you just want to live in Beverly Hills, you're gonna pay. You're gonna be at the mercy of Gavin Newsom. It's going to be a number of problems, and you are going to be stuck. And if you accept that as the price of I have to live in Beverly Hills because there can't be anywhere else on earth, then that's what it is. Let's stop sprinkling the tax deductions on there.
Why leased versus purchase is I like to have multiple homes. And I feel like when you own something, you see it as your nest egg and you literally don't travel as much.
I actually think the same thing about leasing. And that's why I don't lease, because when you're leasing and you're not there, I'm like, oh, every day I just lost another $500 today, you know. I'd rather own the home and figure, hey, generally speaking, they're not going down in value. They should generally at least keep pace with inflation, some more than keep pace with inflation. And again, I may get another benefit like a citizenship or something from that helps me. I think when you lease, you're afraid to leave. So those are the reasons why lease versus buy. My opinion is, you follow my formula, Now, if you want to live in the $100 million mansion of Tuscany, yeah, that's probably going to cost you $20 million. Still a lot bigger nut to crack if you're making that kind of money once you move to Italy and you get into the 200,000 euro annual lump sum tax versus living in Beverly Hills. So how long does it take you to cash flow that, to own the property? You have some built-in asset protection because you've got properties in different countries. I happen to think you're going to spend a lot less overseas, you're going to save a lot more, and you put that into owning properties in places where you want to make bets on them. You're getting yourself out of high-tax places like California that are moving in the wrong direction. You want to go and visit? That's great. Stay in a hotel. So those are my thoughts. I like to own. I don't like to deal with banks. I don't want to take a mortgage. I'm happy to let some money sit there knowing that I'm covered. I don't owe anybody anything. I don't report to anybody. That's worth the mental clarity of putting those dollars in a more conservative position.
This is how to live like a king in Medellin.
This is Medellin like you've never seen it before.